Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making an interesting doorstop. Now, not too long ago on an episode of What the Heck Is That in Kenny's Shop, I brought you this behemoth. And this is a rather large shell casing from a Canadian naval ship. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to convert this into a doorstop. It's not a difficult project, it's not a mind-blowing one, but I think it's going to be fun. And I think the first thing that we need to do is address some of the damage that this shell casing has taken. Well, the shell casing for the most part is in pretty good condition, with the exception of the end here, which has taken quite a bit of abuse. Now, I don't know anything about these shell casings, so I don't know if this happened when it was dropped. I don't know if this happens when it's fired. I really don't know anything about it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a piece of conduit. In this case, it's 1.25 inches in diameter. I'm going to insert it on the inside and then gently tap around using the pipe as an anvil and try to straighten this out as best I can. Well, that actually worked out really well. It's not perfectly round, but I'm okay with that. So I now want to try to clean this up a bit. And what I'm going to use is a brass wheel on my cordless drill, just to take the majority of the gunk off it, sort of thing. You don't want to use a steel brush because I think it would damage the shell casing. It's a softer metal. I get the feeling that a steel brush would really gouge it. So I'm going to use the brass brush and get rid of most of the, well, hopefully most of the oxidization that's on it. Okay, so initial thought, that brass brush is way too coarse. I'm going to need a finer one. So I think that's the way we're going to go. I need to get a finer brush and try it again. Well, the handheld brass brushes that I have left some serious scratch marks in the shell casing. So I stopped that immediately. I do have that one spot there, but I can't feel the scratches with my fingers, so I don't think it has done any damage. However, the softer brass brushes that I tried did nothing. It took nothing off. It made it a little smoother, but it sure as heck didn't clean it up any. So I'm going to turn to one of my favorite metal polishes. I use it on all my cast iron in the shop. I'm going to try a little bit of Autosol on this and see how well it cleans up. Well, I will say this, if you're going to be using Autosol or any metal polish for that matter, you should really get some gloves on. Latex gloves are preferable for me anyway, because they still allow me to have dexterity. But this stuff here, honest to goodness, the black that comes off when you're polishing metal is just unbelievable. Get that stuff on your hands once and you'll know why you should be wearing gloves. So we're just going to try to polish this up a little bit and see what happens. You ever have old socks with holes in them, guys? Don't throw them out. Put them in your shop. They make great rags. So I'm just going to try this on a strip here to see how it works. I think I need a little more polish there. I haven't got quite enough. All right, and let's just see how well that comes up. Okay. Well, I think our only solution here is elbow grease and metal polish. I don't think we need an hour-long video. I think I'm going to have a long afternoon polishing this. So let me see you when this is done and polished to the way I would like it. Well, it's been 2 hours, and Was it worth it? Well, we went from this, which is the way it looked when I first started, to this. So, I don't know. I think it looks pretty darn good. I'd like to get it a little shinier. There are still some areas that don't look quite right to me, but in all honesty, 2 hours of polishing this shell casing, I am spent. My arms are sore, my hands hurt. I am going to take a break from polishing this. I might do a little more later on, but for now, I'm going to call this good enough for me, and I am going to start with the projectile. Well, a search online did not provide me with the kind of information that I wanted as far as the specifications of this ammunition goes. It's a 57 millimeter L70 shell. So I couldn't get the exact dimensions of the projectile, but what I did get was a couple of photos that I could scale from and kind of get a general idea. Now, I don't have stock that is wide enough, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I have these pieces of stock here. I've cut them. They're about 7 inches long, and they're 2 5/8 of an inch. By the time I laminate this together, it will be 2 5/8 square. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to glue these two pieces together, set them aside to dry, and until that happens, there's not much more we can do. Well, our blank is dry, and I have squared up all my edges and squared up the ends, and I have mounted it between centers here at the lathe. And the very first thing that I want to do is I just want to turn this round. Don't go too crazy with turning it round. Just get it round and stop at that point. And at this point, we're going to take this over to the drill press. Well, at this point, what I want to do is I want to drill right in the center on one end. I want to drill a 1/2 inch diameter hole that will be 1 1/4 inches deep. Well, I've also cut a chunk of maple. It's rough cut on one side. It will be turned down, so I'm not concerned about that as long as my ends were square. So what I've done here is I've drilled a 1/2 inch diameter hole, 3/4 of an inch deep in the end, one end of our maple piece. And I have a 2-inch piece of dowel here, and I will insert this with some glue as well into this piece, and I will glue and clamp these pieces up together and let them dry overnight. Well, our blank is dry. I have it mounted up between centers again, and the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place a mark 1 inch in from the headstock end of our board. And what I want to do is this 1 inch here, I want to turn this down to a diameter of 1 1/4 inches, which will be the interior diameter of the top of our shell casing. So what I want to do now is measure what I have left of the walnut blank. I have roughly 6 inches. It's 6 1/4 inches. 2/3 of the way up, so we're going to say at 4 1/4. You know what, I'm going to say 4 1/2. I'm going to place a mark there all the way around our piece. And what I want to do is I want to turn this so that it's just a little bigger than this 2 1/4. You don't want it to be a lot bigger because you don't want too much of an overhang over the shell casing. Now, one thing I want to point out is I've used my parting tool to give me some reference points here as to the thickness that I want. But using the roughing gouge, or any type of tool for that matter, as I'm coming across here, you want to be careful of the toe of your chisel. You don't want to have it at too sharp of an angle and have it cut in right here at our indication mark and then cause a catch or a grab. So as you're coming in closer, make sure that you keep an eye on the toe of that chisel to keep it away from this gap here. All right, and that's pretty good there. We've got a little bit of a lip there, which is what we want. Not too big, but that is pretty much the final dimension here of this one section. So from here now, what I want to do is, for starters, I'm going to turn this round all the way up to the tip, and then we're going to start tapering. So let me just get this turned round and we'll go from there. So while it's not perfectly round yet, I want to start tapering it. And tapering it from our edge right here, where we finished off our main body final dimension, start tapering it down to the tip, to the cap up here. I don't know the technical names of ammunition, so you know, this maple part is going to represent the cap or the tip of the projectile. So from here, I'm just going to start tapering this down to get to, not a point, but a blunt end up here. Well, I'm not quite done here, but I'm having some issues working around the camera. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to just rearrange the camera here, and we'll get this turned down to its final tip shape here at the end. Now, in the picture that I'm using for reference, there is a little indented band right here before the cap and part way up on the cap itself. So I'm just going to put those in using the parting tool. And now at this point, I'm going to give the entire thing a really good sanding to make this thing glass smooth. I don't think we need a video of sanding, so I'll see you when I get it all sanded up. Okay, so the projectile is turned and it is sanded up to 320 grit. I then burnished it with all of the shavings at a higher speed on the lathe, and that kind of gives it a semi-gloss appearance. But either way, we're going to place it into our shell casing here. It's a little tight. Check that out. That is awesome. That is really, really awesome. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. So at this point, the project is pretty much done as far as the turning or the woodworking aspect goes. All that's needed to be done here at this point is I want to put a finish on this projectile. Now, I considered a CA finish, but I honestly think that's a little too high gloss. So I'm going to do a satin varnish on this, and I'm going to give this shell casing just another polish. I'm not sure, it's pretty heavy on its own. If we wanted to, just to prevent it from falling over and to give it a little more stability, you could fill this up with sand if you wanted to, and I still may do that. Like I did with the other one, I may fill it with some kind of weighted material. The other one was buckshot, the smaller shell casing that I showcased on What the Heck Is That in Kenny's shop. But this one here, I may fill it up with sand, put about 1 inch of resin at the top to seal it in and make it an airtight seal in there. And then that would be it. So let me get all of this done, get the finish put on, and I'll show you what the final product came out like. Well, it's been a few days since I've worked on this other than applying the finish, and I really like the way that came out. I didn't want too shiny of a finish on this, so I went with a water-based satin varnish, gave it 3 coats, and sanded in between coats with 400 wet sandpaper. So this is our projectile for our doorstop, and we can just insert this into our casing. Check that out. The world's most awesome doorstop. That is unbelievable. I love it. I love the way it came out. I love the way it looks. And I hope you guys like it too. That's pretty darn cool. And there you have it. A doorstop. Guys, what a crazy project. Now, I know that this one isn't for everybody because not everybody is going to have access to one of these military shells, and it's only by luck that I have one. However, if you're ever at a flea market and you see one of these old shells lying there, because there are plenty of military surplus stores throughout North America that, you know, will sell one of these. If you can get one at a half decent price, this is a really fun project to be able to work on. Now, it's not for everybody, and I know that it's not for everybody, and that's just fine. That's what woodworking is all about. If the project isn't for you, then by all means, don't do it. But that doesn't mean that it's not for somebody else. Guys, this thing really turned out cool. I love the way that it looks. I thought at the beginning that the projectile was, well, a little long. I thought it looked misproportioned to me. But yet, the more pictures that I looked at of the 57 millimeter L70 ammunition, that was the majority of them. Of course, there are different types of ammunition, but the majority of them had this really large projectile at the end. And the more that I looked into it, and the more pictures I looked at, the more information I read, and the more I saw, and the specifications on these weapons for the military, they're scary. I mean, the things that they're capable of are unreal, really unreal. If you're interested, you can look up those naval ships. The power is just unbelievable. But either way, it went from the power to a really cool doorstop. And through my research as well of looking at the projectile, I watched some videos of the weapon actually firing through test and training operations out on the open water. And I can see where the damage came from on the shell, or on the shell casing, because once this thing fires, it ejects those shell casings and they clatter down on the deck of the ship. And I mean, I'm surprised it isn't more destroyed than what it was, or more banged up. But we were able to reshape it and get one heck of a cool looking project, and it really cleaned up well too. I love this thing. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, why not consider liking and subscribing to the channel? You click the bell and then you won't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. Guys, I've had this one in my head to do for quite some time, and I'm glad I finally got it out of my head and into my hands, because it's one wicked looking project, and I hope that you've liked it too. Guys, I hope that you're going to try this for yourself or something similar if you have the opportunity. And if you don't have the opportunity, hopefully it will inspire you to maybe have something in your shop that you can add a wood accent to make your own doorstop. It doesn't have to be a shell casing. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you're going to try something like this for yourself. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.